Turn around and make up. I just can't see you. I tell you, man, I'm enjoying life. You know, sometimes when you listen to music, you think about, times in life. And I had some good times in life when I was a child. I had some fucked up times, but I had some good times, man. I'm talking about, and music was one of them things that brought out the good in the community, man. Man, you could be hearing that Al Green playing on a Saturday, and somebody throwing a grill out before you know it, that grill out turned into like a whole block party of people just enjoying life. They out there drinking, people out there smoking. Ain't nobody out there, thinking about nothing but just enjoying themselves, man. You know, time's so fucked up now you can't even do that no more, man. I remember waking up on Saturday mornings, going out there, you know, uh, grabbing the car at the garage, washing and waxing that junk, and just riding around, man. Just living life. That's why I say, man, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, man, you grew up in the greatest era that's ever gonna be in this world ever again, man. Wasn't no cell phones, wasn't no technology, wasn't no distractions. Man, people actually got to know people. People actually got to connect with people. It's always been madness. There's always been crime. There's always been people that's doing things to people for no reason. But it wasn't as much. And it wasn't as so violent as it is now, man. I'm talking about, I remember as a young child, man, I remember just riding my bicycle with not a worry in the world. Watching the people around me, I really couldn't see the trauma that was going on behind people's doors and behind people's eyes. People was hiding it greatly. They was hiding it. What I mean? It's insane that when you could be around people all your life and you don't even know the traumas that they went through. You don't know the nights that they went to sleep hungry, and when they was over their friends' houses eating noodles and bread and shit, they were trying to fill up before they went home because there was no food in the refrigerator, man. I tell people, man, you cannot judge people because you never know what people are going through. Sometimes it's easier to just ask someone, are you okay? You know, because sometimes when people say they okay, they really not okay, man. They just waiting for someone that really cares about them to reach their hand out and let them know that they're there for them with no judgment. You know, whatever's going on in your life, you can tell me, and I'm not going to judge you, but I'm going to give you my opinion and give you some advice that I feel like might help you. You know, I think about a time in my life that I was in my marriage, and me and my ex was going through something one day, and one of her friends was over there, and you know, me and her got to arguing. It got real aggressive, and the next thing that I heard her friend come out of her mouth shocked me so bad. Her friend told her to attack me. She said, "Girl, get it out your system. Go on, get him. Get it out your system." I was sitting there thinking to myself, this person doesn't have my best interests or yours in heart. For me to confront you for something that you done and you wrong, and your friend tells you to attack me, and me and her never got over that. You know, she never understood the disrespect in the whole situation and told me that I couldn't tell her who to be friends with. You know, I never was a controlling individual, and I never will be, because I understand that you can never control an adult. You can't tell an adult what to do, and you can't control what they do when they're not around you. You just hope that they do everything that they should do to not bring shame on you or your name. You know, and you should do the same thing. You know, it's so much madness in this world that I sit back and I watch so many people get involved in other people's relationships and give people bad advice. I mean, give them bad advice. You know, that's why they call licensed psychiatrists and licensed therapists. Because everybody shouldn't give advice. Because you got some people out there that are broken. I mean, broken. They've been through so many things with people in relationships. People have done them so bad. They have done so much bad to other people that they don't believe that you could actually find somebody that would love you and do everything right. So they intrude into your life and your relationship, and next thing you know, you and your person ain't even together no more because of the conflicts of others. You know, even when if one of my friends asks me relationship advice, I always give them the best advice that I can give them, but I never tell them to hate the person that they say they love. I never talk down on the person that they say they love. I just let them get their anger, and, you know, I let them talk to me the way they need to talk to me. And I let them know that you ain't never got to worry about what you were saying to me going no farther. Because I understand sometimes people need to vent. But if I run across somebody in life and I see that someone is actually taking advantage of them, and I say I care about that person, I'm going to tell them. You know, because should nobody ever be misled in life to think that I woke up this morning and my life is perfect and I got plans to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. But the person you laying next to already got other plans. That's not fair. You know, because I feel like that if you build something with somebody, you should be able to build more with that individual, not even though you're not with that individual. Because if you say you love someone and you fell in love with them, you always gonna love that person, no matter what. I can't ever in my life feel like that I could build up any kind of hate towards a person that I felt like that was my whole world. You know, I tell people, man, get to know the people that you fall in love with. Hold out on sex because sometimes sex confuse the situations in life. Get to know the people that you surround yourself with so you won't fall into the traps of life of misery and misunderstandings that complicate your life. Man, I've learned that in life you gotta always have them conversations with yourself and ask yourself, how is this situation gonna benefit me mentally, physically, or is it gonna drain me mentally and physically? Because I got tired of waking up every day having conversation with people that wasn't never winning. And they wasn't winning not because they wasn't doing what they felt like they take to win, but they wasn't winning because they playing a game that can't be win. You can't win a game that's already rigged. I tell people that they're still in the streets, man. The streets ain't what you think it is. You can get all the money you can and hope and pray that you make it out without catching a case or getting killed. But in certain parts of your life, you need to wake up and realize that God waking you up for a reason, man. And it ain't for you to go out there and create chaos and madness and spread misery. Man, I wake up every day and I'm smiling, I'm laughing, I'm joyful. It ain't because I'm rich, it's because I found peace, man. I found peace. When you find peace, ain't nothing else you can understand but peace, and you don't never want no more. I tell people this, man. I am who I am, you feel me? But a person that know me, they know that it's all sides of me. I'm respected in the streets. I'm respected around my so-called peers. And in Nashville, Tennessee, it ain't now person gonna be able to tell you nothing bad about me, but he's a hustler. But he showed a head buster. I don't go out there and invite anyone to come play no Ranger games, but I tell a person this, man, you better pack your lunch, man. You know what I mean? Ain't that crazy? You see how you had them trolls coming here? Like fitness stud time. I just blocked them accounts. It don't make me no different. I just laugh at them. You gotta laugh at people. Sometimes you gotta tell people things that they don't want to hear and they get mad about it. Especially these rappers, these entertainers, these people just faking the funk and making people think that they got more than they really don't. They live in a fantasy life, man. Sometimes you gotta check people to let them know that they actually ain't who they thought they was, man. It crushes some people. That's why I tell people, man, if a person respond to something that you say, that mean what you were saying was true. You know what I mean? Anything that I say about any individual, no matter who you are, is true, man. I have a way of explaining it to the world that a lot of people can relate to, and they holler out that stupid motherfucker at the same time I'm already saying it. You know, because any person that has a chance to become a millionaire should never ever be sitting around crying about money ever again in life. If God bless you with $1 million cash, you should never look back. Never look back. But a lot of these so-called entertainers, these trends, these individuals that ain't number trends, can't do nothing but try to stay in the light. You know, I don't wake up in my world thinking about pushing bad energy out there. I could give a two fucks about any other individual unless it's news to me, man. You know, but you do got to put a sucker and a coward in their spot every time they try to say something that you know they saying something ain't right, man. I talk about political individuals, the president, senators, governors. I talk about people that I feel like that ain't doing what they should be doing. I talk about things that people don't want to talk about because they scared of the backlash of other individuals saying, "Oh, you're the Trump lover. Are you hating on your own kind?" I'm just strictly speaking the facts of a situation. And if you take the time to actually sit back and do your research on what I'm talking about, you'll come to the same conclusion I came to. You know, sometimes you got to take them so-called racial blinders off and realize that everything ain't racially motivated, man. You know, I learned a long time ago when I started studying politics, I found out that politics was all about money. I found out that politicians, no matter who you are, black, white, Chinese, Asian, non-documented, born, raised citizen, if you a politician, you ain't shit. Good afternoon. You know, but people always quick to judge when they don't know. People will call you names because they ignorant to the point of what you trying to put across. You know, everybody call, you know, and then you sit back and you watch the so-called leaders people that have a voice, misuse their voice in racial words. People don't understand this. Them politicians, they flame you up. They heat up the communities and make y'all go into uproar, knowing that if you go up against one of these politicians, or if you threaten one of these people, or if you hurt one of these people, you're not gonna get away with it, man. But they put it out there when they in these chambers and senates, and they calling each one of their colleagues the Klan and telling them that they racist and telling them that they this and this and this and that. But then you don't have that same voice. You don't have that same voice because if you get into an altercation with an officer and you raise your voice, them folk gonna charge you with obstruction just and take you to jail. But if a politician get to argue with a state trooper or someone and they recognize who he is, he's not gonna get treated the same as you would. You know, and a lot of people try to compare great civil rights leaders that laid their line on out there on them concrete streets for the right for everyone, no matter what color you are, to be able to have the right to vote, to be treated the same. But people don't understand that it's so many people out here that are so hell bent on forgetting about the past. And then some people want to use the past to motivate racial tensions in 2026 of things that happened in 1940. Most of the people that was in them racial days don't even exist anymore. And not to say that racism is not in this world, because it is. And it comes from both sides. Black, white, Chinese, Asian. You have people that be black that hate their own kind or dislike their own ethnic background. They do everything they can to mock it. They do everything to mock it. But them be the ones that people listen to because they think it's entertainment and it's laughter. But when that entertainment turns into violence, people don't understand why it turned into violence. If you are an entertainer, social media content creator, or just some fool with a phone that want to go viral, you don't want to go viral to a point where somebody put your ass in that bag, man. You don't want to. But a lot of people feel like that if they don't put on a show and do stupid shit, like I was sitting there and I was watching the Chubb the Builder, the racist Caucasian, and the way that he was running around, because I'm from Nashville and I've seen all the video posts of him running around in Nashville, but what surprised me was that it was more black young men that was smiling and joking and taking pictures with him and putting it on their own Instagram trying to get likes and follows. And that's just like with Barbecue Blue. Man, you got a person that came out of Fort Worth, Texas that was a straight clucker. They got a phone, walked around, and talked about everybody until one day he got on the internet and somebody bit. And then he started an argument. He started threatening folks, started talking about calling the police on folks, started talking about ruining folks' lives, started talking down about all races, even his own race. And people applauded that shit. Yeah, Clarence Thomas. See, a lot of these young folk don't even understand that Clarence Thomas, when I was young, Clarence Thomas was not on the Supreme Court justice. It was a Thurgood Marshall. And the plan was always to replace anyone of color with another person of color to give the opportunity of people of color to have a voice in the Supreme Court. But what they didn't do is they didn't do a thorough background check on Clarence Thomas. Because Clarence Thomas is one of them people that hate his own kind and married to a Caucasian woman. And people don't understand this, that the Supreme Court gutted the whole 1945 Voting Act. They don't gutted it. And a lot of people that don't stay up with politics, they don't understand that this is something that's done by blacks, whites. This is not just done by Caucasians. This is done by black folks. Clarence Thomas, he on the Supreme Court. He had a vote. Guess what his vote was? He voted to gut it. He voted everything that his ancestors fought for, died for the rights. And when he had a chance to vote, he voted against it. Sometimes you got to understand that when you're dealing with politics and government, and people say, well, your vote counts, and some people say your vote don't count. When you start looking at the democratic system that we have in America, you realize that your vote really don't count. Especially when they break it down to the electors that's selected by every state. One individual walks in and casts their vote for whatever the race is. That's the majority vote. Because I believe if them folk was to actually have ballots where they went out there and everyone had to show one by one like a video game, like live, I voted for such and such, this is what it is. Because when you give an opportunity, because people say voting is a right and it should be secret. Because a person can tell you, oh, I voted for Obama, but in actuality, if we was to go pull that person's voting card, they voted the opposite. Because don't nobody ever know who voted for who. Because ain't nobody can ever go say, well, let me see all the ballots. Let me count all the ballots from state to state so I can make sure that person. Let me go interview each one of them people and say, did you vote for this person? Did you vote for this person? Did you vote for this person? And you can't do that because it's secret. You know, and then when I sit back and a lot of people was like, I don't know how Trump got elected when he's so motivated on hating of races and this and that. But when they broke it down the same night that Trump was elected, and even days and months, and even you can look it up right now, dude was voted in by more minorities. Minorities, not Caucasians. Man, it wasn't Caucasians didn't go out there and vote for Trump. Yeah, them backwoods racist motherfuckers voted for Trump. Some of them billionaires voted for Trump. But Trump whole win came from people, and they said most of them was Hispanic. And then you start hearing people that was Hispanic, people that was from Cuba, people from different countries that start speaking out that was successful businessmen and successful businesswomen. And they was like, well, when I came over to this country and my ancestors came, they came the right way, so why should nobody else? You know, we came over the right way, and they wanted somebody to stop the flood of migrants from coming into the country because it was killing the economy to where people that used to make so much money in construction wasn't making that money because people was using slave wage type tactics, using undocumented people to build homes. So it was driving the price of hanging drywall. It was driving the price down of everything. You know, look, man, you ain't gonna never, ever, ever, ever hear me talk about a president and say that president didn't make mistakes. Never. You're never gonna see a president of this country or any other country that people ain't gonna say that they ain't shit. I don't care who you are. They can elect Oprah Winfrey as the next president, and soon as she get in, they gonna come up with a billion different reasons why she ain't shit, a billion different reasons why she ain't doing this and why she should be doing that, because they don't understand that the president don't got as much power as a lot of people think he do. Yeah, we got a president that assigns executive orders and put shit into play, and then next thing you know, somebody from the ACUL filed a lawsuit and they strike it down and they tell this executive order ain't shit, but then a lot of them executive orders go through. You know, because if you really want to do something in a community, I'm speaking like a councilman or a senator or representative or something like that, the only time you see them people is when they running for office and when they rerunning for office. You don't see them folks walking around in your community on the daily, on the weekly. Them same people that was at the motherfucking hood restaurant eating lunch during the campaign ain't been back to that restaurant never again. Never. You know, you got to look for what them people don't want you to look for, and that's the mask that they got to take off at nighttime after they don't came out there and lied to all the poor people. You know, you hear these politicians talking about donate money to this so we can fight these laws. How are you going to ask a person that ain't got shit, that's out here might be making minimum wage or barely making it from day to day, to give you something when you make $250,000 every year for walking around in air inside of a building? You know, I think that like when they just did something the other day, they said them politicians said long as they're, it's a government shutdown, they shouldn't be paid. I don't think a politician should be paid, period. If you want to be a politician, you shouldn't be paid. You know, you saying you trying to help the people, help the people. You know, if that's the case, let's pay you a base salary the same salary that people in your community make. So if the highest person in your community makes $45,000 a year, let's give you $45,000 a year. You live in the same neighborhood, and let's see how hard they fight for you and me. They not. They not. Man, them folks gonna go get them a house out in Brentwood. They gonna go get them a house out there in Hollywood. You know, I had a discussion with a person the other day. You know, in politics and religion, always some type of conversation get heated. You know, because people was talking about, well, my preacher does so good for me, and then I said, man, look, when I was growing up and I seen most Baptist churches, preachers didn't get paid, man. Preachers had jobs. Them folk worked regular jobs and preached on the weekend, and the only time they asked for money is when the church really needed it. You know, you got so many churches that holler out, donate to the building fund. Man, them folks don't get y'all enough money to build 1,000 churches. And you constantly hollering out building fund. Every church got a building fund. You know, ain't no way that you feel justified giving no preacher, a man of God, $1 million or $2 million every year just to come in church and do what he should do because God called him to do it. Ain't that what he said? He said God called him to do it. So if God called you, and then it crushes me when I hear them preachers say, God wants you to give me this, and God say I deserve. God ain't got no one-way radio talking straight to that fool, y'all. Anything I feel like that God speaks to a preacher, he ain't gonna let it be the second. You speaking, especially when it's about you. Why God want to have a secondary conversation when he can have a direct conversation with the individual? You know, it's just them preachers, they take advantage of people because people be so drained in life and going through so many things in life, they looking for a miracle. And them preachers, when they sit down every week, it's like a study. They study the Bible and they come up with all the right verses, all the right words that they gonna talk to their community about. They know who their community is. They know their community is built with nothing but a whole bunch of poor folks hoping and wishing on a well, and they ain't got to do nothing but get up there and say, God gonna make a difference as long as you keep walking the right way. Put some money in that collection plate. God gonna give you everything you deserve as long as you let your wicked ways go away and put some money in that collection plate. You know, it's crazy, but if you was to start going, if I go to a church or a place of worship and they have ATM machines in the building, I know where they with the shit. If I go to a church and it got mega in front of it, I know them folks already been stealing and I ain't finna give them my money, man. You know, mega mean big. You know, the more people is, you know, because people don't understand that cults is something similar to churches. And sometimes people get the word of God mixed up with the words that come out of man's mouth. It's crazy. But anyway, man, I hope y'all having a great day, man. The sun's shining. You know, the birds chirping. These young motherfuckers walk around out here with these AR-15s. I'm just telling you, be prepared. I'm just telling you, be prepared for the bullshit and live life, man. Drink you some motherfucking 1738 and get at it. I ain't hating on nobody. I ain't hating on nobody. I hope everyone get happy and love.